You're walking through the suburra just after sunset and you hear someone running, fast, then shouting. Not the normal kind of shouting, the kind that makes everyone stop and look. A man crashes past you knocking into a fruit stand. Figs go everywhere. The vendor yells, but the man doesn't stop. He's gone, swallowed by the narrow streets and the failing light. No one chases him. No one blows a whistle. There are no police officers to call. For a moment, everyone just stands there, and then the vendor starts picking up his figs, muttering, and the street goes back to what it was doing. This is Rome. 1 million people crammed into a few square miles, and there's no police force. Not in the way you'd understand it. No precinct stations. No patrol cars. No hotline to dial. And yet somehow the city doesn't descend into chaos. Somehow order holds. The question is whether Rome was safe. It wasn't really. Not by modern standards. But the question is, how does a city of 1 million people maintain any kind of control without the infrastructure we assume is essential? How do you keep the peace when there's no one whose job it is to keep the peace? You're still in the suburra, one of the densest neighborhoods in Rome. It's full dark now and the streets have a different energy. The shops are closing. The food stalls are packing up. But the taverns, Thermopolia, Papini, those are just getting started. You can hear laughter, arguments, the sound of dice hitting tables. Most people are heading inside. Not because there's a curfew, there isn't one, not for citizens, but because being outside after dark in Rome is a calculated risk. The streets are narrow. The lighting is whatever you bring with you. Torches, oil lamps, maybe a slave carrying a lantern if you can afford it. The buildings lean in overhead, blocking even the moonlight. This is when the vigils come out. You hear them before you see them. Boots on stone, moving in formation. A group of 6, maybe 8 men carrying clubs, buckets, and a long hook on a pole. They're not soldiers exactly. They don't wear full armor, but they're not civilians either. They're the vigils, the watchmen, and their job officially is to fight fires. Rome burns, constantly. The apartment buildings, insulae, are wood and clay and oil lamps and cramped cooking spaces. When a fire starts, it doesn't stay contained. It jumps from building to building, block to block. In 64 AD, a fire burned for 6 days and destroyed 2/3 of the city. So the vigils were created. 7,000 men, organized into cohorts, stationed across the 14 districts of Rome. They patrol at night. They carry water. They carry hooks to pull down burning buildings before the fire spreads. But here's the thing, they also enforce order. Not officially. Not in their job description. But if you're out after dark and you're causing trouble, if you're drunk and loud, if you're starting a fight, if you look like you're about to rob someone, the vigils will stop you. They'll ask questions. They'll tell you to go home. And if you don't, they'll make you. They have the authority because someone has to. Because a city of 1 million people can't function if the night belongs to criminals. So the firefighters became the closest thing Rome has to a police force, and everyone just accepts it. You're moving west now toward the Forum. The streets are wider here, better lit. There are more torches, more people still out. You pass a group of men in togas, late but still conducting business. One of them has a slave walking ahead carrying a lantern. Another has 2 slaves, both armed with clubs, bodyguards. If you're wealthy in Rome, you don't walk alone at night. You bring protection, private protection, because the state won't provide it. There's no assumption that the government is responsible for your personal safety. That's your problem. So you hire people, ex-soldiers usually, men who know how to fight and don't ask too many questions. This is how rich Romans move through the city after dark, surrounded by a small, armed entourage. It's a display of power, but it's also practical. Robbery is common. Assault is common. If you look vulnerable, you are vulnerable. But here's what surprised me. It's not lawless. It's not anarchy. There are rules. Everyone knows them. The consequences for breaking them are severe and they're public. Rome doesn't have a police force, but it has something else, something older, more direct. It has retribution. You're in the forum now. Even at night, it's not empty. Torches burn along the colonnades. A few people are still here, lawyers maybe finishing arguments, a priest locking up a temple. And in the center, near the rostra, there's a wooden platform. It's empty right now, but you know what it's for: public punishment. Rome doesn't have prisons, not the way we think of them. There's the Tullianum, a small stone dungeon under the Forum, dark and airless, but it's not for long-term incarceration. It's for enemies of the state waiting for execution. For regular criminals, there are no prison sentences, no rehabilitation programs, no parole hearings. If you commit a crime in Rome, the punishment is immediate and visible. Minor crimes, theft, fraud, assault, usually result in fines, sometimes flogging. You're brought before a magistrate, the case is heard, and if you're guilty, you're punished in public, right there, in the forum or in your neighborhood so everyone can see. The point isn't just to punish you, it's to remind everyone else what happens if they step out of line. For serious crimes, murder, treason, arson, the punishment is death. And it's not hidden away in a prison yard. It's public. Crucifixion, beheading, being thrown from the Tarpeian Rock. The method depends on your status. Citizens get beheaded, which is quick. Non-citizens get crucified, which is. It's brutal. It's meant to be. Because Rome doesn't have the infrastructure to police 1 million people, so it uses fear. It uses visibility. It makes sure that everyone knows what happens if you break the rules, and it makes sure you see it happen to someone else first. You're walking south now, through streets that are darker, quieter. You're in a neighborhood where the Vigiles don't patrol as often, where the buildings are older, more fragile, where people keep to themselves. This is where social control matters more than state control. In Rome, your reputation is everything. Who you are, who your family is, who you're connected to, that determines how people treat you, whether they trust you, whether they'll do business with you. If you're known as a thief, no one will hire you. No one will lend you money. No one will rent you a room. You're functionally exiled without ever leaving the city. This works because Rome is small. Not geographically it's huge. But socially, it's a network of neighborhoods, guilds, temples, patron-client relationships. Everyone knows someone who knows someone. Information spreads fast. If you steal from a merchant in the suburra, by tomorrow, every merchant in the district knows. By next week, merchants across the city know. There's no formal database, no criminal records office. But there doesn't need to be. The city remembers. The people remember. And if you're serious about crime, if you're running a gang, if you're organizing something bigger, you're not just dealing with the Vigiles. You're dealing with someone more dangerous. You're dealing with a patron. You're near the base of the Palatine Hill now. This is where the powerful live. Senators, wealthy families. The emperor himself, somewhere up there behind walls you'll never see past. And here's how power actually works in Rome. It's not centralized, it's not bureaucratic, it's personal. If you're a regular person in Rome, a shopkeeper, a laborer, a freedman, you probably have a patron. A wealthy person who supports you, who lends you money when you need it, who helps you get work, who vouches for you in disputes. In return, you support them. You show up when they need a crowd. You vote the way they tell you to vote back when voting mattered. You spread the word that they're generous, honorable, worth following. This system, patronate, is how Rome actually functions. Not through laws and police, but through networks of obligation and loyalty. And if someone wrongs you, you don't go to the police. You go to your patron. And if your patron is powerful enough, the problem gets solved. Maybe through legal channels, maybe not. If someone steals from you and you're connected to a senator, that thief is going to have a very bad time. Not because the state intervened. Because your patron intervened, because he sent people, because word got out that you're protected, because in Rome, justice isn't blind. It's personal and it's proportional to your social standing. This is how order is maintained. Not through institutions, but through relationships. Not through law enforcement, but through reputation, obligation, and the threat of consequences that are immediate, visible, and unavoidable. You're moving east now, toward the Esquiline Gate. The streets here are wider, less chaotic. You're near the edge of the city where the density finally starts to thin out. But even here, even at the margins, you see the same systems at play. There's a warehouse, one of the Horia, the state-controlled grain storage facilities. It's guarded, not by police, by soldiers or private contractors paid by the state. Their job isn't to keep the peace, it's to protect the grain. Because if someone breaks into a state warehouse and steals grain, that's not just theft. That's threatening the food supply of the entire city. That's political. And political crimes get handled differently. For most crimes, Rome relies on social pressure, on patrons, on the Vigiles. But for crimes that threaten the state, rebellion, conspiracy, large-scale theft, anything that could destabilize the city, the state responds with force. Soldiers, arrests, executions, fast, brutal, public. The message is clear. You can steal from your neighbor and maybe you'll get away with it, but you can't steal from the state. You can fight in the street and maybe the Vigiles will break it up, maybe they won't. But you can't riot. You can cheat a merchant and maybe your reputation suffers, maybe it doesn't. But you can't threaten the grain supply. The state doesn't police daily life. It can't. It doesn't have the resources, but it absolutely controls anything that could threaten its survival. And everyone knows where that line is. You're back in the suburra now. It's late. The taverns are still open but quieter. The streets are mostly empty except for the Vigiles making their rounds and the occasional group of men moving quickly, heads down, not looking for trouble. You pass an insula where someone is being loud, drunk, probably yelling at someone inside. A neighbor leans out a window and tells him to shut up. He doesn't. The neighbor threatens to call the Vigiles. That works. The man mutters something and goes quiet. It's interesting, the way order here is negotiated. Constantly, in real time, there's no 911. There's no patrol car that shows up in 3 minutes. If something's wrong, you handle it yourself, or you get your neighbors involved, or you go find the Vigiles, or you go to your patron. There are options, but they all require you to act. To participate, to be part of the system. Rome doesn't maintain order for you. It maintains order with you. You're not a passive citizen waiting for the state to protect you. You're an active part of a network, social, economic, political, that keeps things from falling apart. And if you're not part of that network, if you don't have a patron, if you don't have neighbors who care, if you don't have money for bodyguards, then you're vulnerable. And that's your problem. It's near midnight now. You're standing on a corner watching a group of Vigiles pass by. They're talking, relaxed, but their eyes are scanning the street, looking for smoke, looking for trouble, looking for anything that doesn't fit. One of them nods at you. You nod back, and they keep moving. You think about the fact that this is how a city of 1 million people keeps from tearing itself apart. Not through surveillance, not through a massive police force, not through prisons full of people serving long sentences, but through a patchwork of systems, social pressure, patronage networks, public punishment, armed watchmen who are technically firefighters, private bodyguards, and the ever-present threat that if you go too far, someone more powerful than you will make you regret it. It's not efficient. It's not fair. It's not designed. It's emergent. 1 million people figuring out how to coexist without killing each other, and somehow, most of the time, it works. But it only works because everyone participates, because everyone knows the rules, because everyone understands that there's no external authority coming to save you. There's only the people around you, the people above you, and the people who owe you favors. And you wonder, what happens when that stops being enough? Rome doesn't have an answer yet. Rome just keeps moving, keeps patrolling, keeps punishing, keeps assuming that tomorrow will look like today, that the social fabric will hold, that 1 million people can keep living on top of each other without everything collapsing into violence. And so far, they're right. But standing here in the dark, listening to the distant sound of wooden wheels on stone and the low murmur of voices from a tavern down the street, you can't help but feel how fragile it all is. How much depends on people just agreeing to the rules. How quickly it could all fall apart if they didn't. Rome has no police, but it has order, for now.